Executive-legislative relations deepens as joint leadership retreats underway in Abuja.
Confirmation of my nominees and passage of critical legislations are all testaments to your willingness and commitment.
INEC hosts stakeholders meeting ahead of Ondo State governorship election coming up Saturday.
Federal government intensifies preparations for next census, begins next phase of enumeration area demarcation.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the state of teaching and teachers in Nigeria.
As the popular saying goes, teachers' reward is in heaven. Well, this might not be totally true in the current circumstances.
You're right, Jumai. The reason, of course, isn't far-fetched. Just yesterday, on the occasion of the World Teachers' Day, President Muhammadu Buhari announced a special package for teachers.
Now, this is part of incentives meant to boost the morale of teachers and to ensure that they start getting their reward right from this world.
And the incentives include a special salary scale, an increase in the years of service from 35 to 40 years, plus the retirement age now for teachers being 65 years. There is also a special pension scheme and the construction of low-cost housing for teachers in rural areas, plus restoration of bursary awards for teachers who are schooling, among others.
And these incentives, according to the president, are meant to encourage teachers to deliver better service in view of the fact that teachers have the power to shape and reshape the lives of the young children, as well as help learners to manifest their hidden talents.
According to President Buhari, only great teachers can produce excellent people and students that will make the future of our country great.
And this year's World Teachers' Day will remain indelible in the minds of many teachers as it coincides with the Diamond Jubilee celebration of Nigeria and the packages reeled out by the federal government to enhance quality education in the country.
The theme of this year's celebration is Teachers Leading in Crisis, Reimagining the Future. So, why the theme for this year's celebration, and how will the incentives rolled out by the president yesterday motivate teachers to greater service? How will this improve the quality of the teaching profession and indeed of teaching itself? What other measures should be taken to further enhance the profession in the country? These are some of the issues we intend to raise with our guests as we discuss the state of the teaching profession in Nigeria today on Good Morning Nigeria. I'm Kingsley Osadolo and I welcome you to the program.
And I am Juma Yusuf. Thanks for joining us. We are transmitting Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA live from our studios here in Abuja. But first of all, we'll be bringing you complimentary segments in the course of the program. Now, let's take the morning news. A two-day brainstorming session aimed at finding a middle ground in the executive-legislative partnership for effective service delivery in the country is underway in Abuja. President Muhammadu Buhari, who declared open the joint leadership retreat between the two arms of government, reaffirmed the collective will and sincere aspirations to build a nation where justice, peace and progress are the norms.
The accelerated passage of the 2020 budget, the timely confirmation of my nominees and passage of critical legislations are all testaments to your willingness and commitment to play your part towards delivering effective services to Nigerians.
Now talking security, the chief of the consistency in the capacity building as one of the key components of the vision of Chief of the Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Baba Abubakar, has made Nigerian Air Force self-sufficient in research, development and maintenance of its platforms.
You must compare notes with others. That's the only way you can move forward. And we must try to look inwards in terms of being able to produce some of these things like the research and development that we are conducting in the Air Force. And the whole idea is to lay a foundation where people can now take over from.
This forms part of a paper presented by the Air Chief at the Armed Forces Command and Staff College, Jaji, Kaduna. Now talking sports, Minister of Youth and Sports Development Sunday Dare has visited the Louis Edet House in Abuja and met the Inspector General of Police Mohammed Adamu over recent alleged brutality involving youths by the operatives of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad.
The police have a statutory responsibility to keep the peace. We recognize the work the police force has done in the past years, is doing currently. And I think that this development gives us another opportunity to improve the relationship between the youth and the police.
Any individual within us that goes contrary to his training in terms of being civil to members of the public, we will not let them go free.
As the Ondo State election draws nearer, sensitive materials for Saturday's Ondo State governorship election have been delivered to the Central Bank of Nigeria, Akure, for safekeeping from where they will be distributed to various polling units on Thursday. Chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, disclosed this at a stakeholders meeting in Akure. He says every vote cast on Saturday will not only count, but the electorate will determine the next governor of Ondo State.
Be rest assured, votes will count. Polling unit level results will be uploaded in real time as polling units close for public view, even before we finally collect and make a declaration of winner.
Any person that violates any components of the criminal law shall be apprehended and be charged under the appropriate section of the law.
To other matters now, preparation towards Nigeria's next census is intensifying with commencement of the next phase of the enumeration area demarcation. The exercise, which is the foundation for the actual census, will cost the federal government the sum of 10 billion naira.
The President has graciously followed this up by a further approval of an additional 4.5 billion to be included in the 2021 budget for the completion of the exercise as part of preparations for the next census.
And for the latest on COVID-19 in Nigeria, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control has announced 120 new confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the country. Rivers State has the highest number of 65, followed by FCT with 12 cases. Ogun has 9, Katsina 8, Anambra 7, Bauchi and Oyo have 5 cases each. Nasarawa has 3, Kaduna 2, while Kwara, Taraba, Imo and Delta States have 1 case each. So far, Nigeria has 59,465 confirmed cases of COVID-19, out of which 50,951 were treated and discharged, while 1,113 persons died of the virus. That's the news. Good Morning Nigeria continues after this time out. Do stay. You're welcome back. Federal government embarks on multiple job creation through agriculture. Details of these and more on Business Moves with Chimobi Walter in Nigeria.
federal government is set to establish the first multinational fishing company in Africa. This was disclosed by an industrialist, Mr. Patrick Osobeze, while commending the Buhari-led administration in its efforts to sustain growth and economic development in the Niger Delta region through the federal government amnesty program. The implementation of the amnesty program, he said, has ensured safety, growth and economic resuscitation of the region while investing in human capital development. The multinational fishing program will, according to him, provide foreign direct investment for the country and employment opportunities for youths who will be trained in different aspects of the business to add value to the product and earn foreign exchange for the country through export opportunities.
So we're looking forward to an incredible future for the Niger Delta, a revival of the fishing system. The fact that when they catch the fish, it's not just for the Niger Delta people. Depots will be built in all the 6 zones of the Federation where today's fish will be found today. So you will catch fish in the Atlantic Ocean. It will be freighted up to various parts of the country overnight, and by the next day you will have sea fish in your zone. Fish, again, is the highest protein giver. It's the most cost-effective way of getting protein. So for the national health and for food security, this 100 trawlers will go in no short way in changing the perspective of fishing in Nigeria.
The program, he explained, will further integrate intra-Africa trade between Nigeria and countries within the coastal region. Here is a graphic representation of the closing figures on the floor of the exchange. With business news, I'm Chimobi Walter Naji.
Many thanks, Chimobi Walter Naji, for the business package. Coming up next is Newspaper Review.
Newspaper reviewer Bayo Toby is in the studio. Good morning, Bayo.
Thank you, Juma. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Right, Bayo. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Let's begin with the Nation newspaper. One of the stories on the front page of the Nation, which is trending also elsewhere. We have this just beside the photograph there on the front page. It says massive incentives for teachers. That's the second lead story on the front page there. Massive incentives for teachers, with a rider, Ekiti teacher is nation's best. And then you can see just below that, the headline for the sidebar says the goodies. Special salary scale for basic and secondary school teachers. Increase of mandatory service years from 35 to 40 years. Construction of low-cost houses for teachers in rural areas. Special allowance for teachers in rural areas. Peculiar allowance for science teachers. Automatic admission into public schools for children of teachers. They are also to enjoy free tuition. Automatic employment for education graduates and provision of loan facilities for agriculture, housing, cars, motorcycles, among others. That's the bouquet of goodies there that President Muhammadu Buhari announced yesterday on the occasion of the World Teachers' Day. Now, above the nameplate of the Nation newspaper, let's go above the nameplate. PIB, that's Petroleum Industry Bill, proposes unbundling of NNPC. 3 firms to emerge. That's page 8. Isaiah Yamo to pursue eligibility case against Obaseki and Shaibu. That's page 7. And Okonjo-Iweala surges ahead in WTO DG race. The federal government launches probe into FSA's activities. That's page 5. Ondo 2020. 10 parties endorse PDP candidate. Police deploy 33,783. More ZLP members defect to APC. INEC, your votes will determine who wins. Details on page 4. Robbers ask for forgiveness while robbing priest in Benue. Robbers ask for forgiveness while robbing priest in Benue. Page 6. And the list story says, Army to governors. Create access to forests for troops. Opening up difficult terrains will enhance efficiency. Kogi, Nasarawa already cooperating. And then right at the foot of the front page, you have 2 headlines there on the strip of the front page. Says, I killed my kids under hallucination. That's the lady who killed two of her children because the husband married another wife. Tambuwa's 8th son remanded for rape. Details on page 6.
And from the Daily Trust newspaper, just below the masthead, restructuring, Southern Middle Belt leaders tackle presidency over comment. You find details on page 6. Buhari approves 14.5 billion for census. Naira, find the details on page 7. COVID-19, Nigerian scientists develop faster, cheaper test kits. You find that on page 7. And then the bold headlines, which my colleague Kingsley read from his own review. Teachers get new salary scale and houses with rider. Retirement age now 65. Service years 40. Bursary award, automatic jobs for education students. TED fund to fund teaching practice in universities and colleges of education. And we want approval backed by law. That's coming from the Nigerian Union of Teachers. And the picture story you see there, teachers from the Federal Capital Territory during a march past to commemorate the 2020 World Teachers' Day at Eagle Square in Abuja yesterday. And at the bottom plate of the Daily Trust newspaper, former Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital CMD Professor Dutse dies at 60. You find details on page 4. Woman beats stepdaughter to death in Adamawa. That is on page 7. And Trump recovers, says, I feel better than 20 years ago. Bayo.
Well, let's start from the goodies that is coming to the Nigerian teacher. The federal government has approved special salary scale for basic and secondary school teachers in Nigeria. Their career service year is also extended from age 60 to 65, while the service year is now from age 35 to 40. There are several other goodies which Kingsley and Jumai have also among, but among them is automatic admission for biological children of teachers. Before you say teachers now, they will now earn their reward on earth, the Secretary General of the Nigerian Union of Teachers, Dr. Mike Ige, says it behoves on the NUT to work with the Minister of Education, Minister of Justice, to make sure that all these promises become a reality. The intention of government is to make sure that teachers are incentivized to provide the quality education for their students and contribute to national development. This was revealed by the Minister of Education, who represented the President at the World Teachers' Day that was celebrated yesterday. U.S. President Donald Trump has been discharged from the National Military Medical Center Monday evening. Upon arriving at the White House, he said, I feel better than 20 years ago. I learned so much about coronavirus. Don't let it dominate you. Don't be afraid of it. You are going to beat it. And this advice is most instructive for his own personal, especially at the West Wing, because yesterday, his press secretary, Kelly McNanny, and 2 other deputies also tested positive to coronavirus. Earlier on Monday afternoon, President Donald Trump had driven past his supporters at the medical center, waving and acknowledging cheers. There are concerns expressed by his opponents that he probably will have now exposed Secret Service personnel to infection risks. The president announced on Friday that he and the First Lady, Melania Trump, had tested positive. White House physician St. Colony says his clinical status supports his safe return to the White House. He says he will be surrounded by world-class medical care 24/7. So the president is in very good hands. Then there's this interesting story that Kingsley read earlier on. Robbers rob and seek forgiveness. Robbers broke into the bedroom of Reverend Father Solomon Okeyima of St. Augustine's Parish, Makurdi, at 2 a.m. yesterday. And they shot into the air and scaled the fence. When they got in, they put the pastor under pressure. And for every item they picked or stole, they will say, "Forgive us, Father." So they picked, among other things, thanksgiving offers, "Forgive us, Father." They picked his phones, "Forgive us, Father." They picked his footwear and the sound system, and they asked for forgiveness from the Father. The clergy asked for prayers for these robbers so that they can leave their evil ways. And one thing that shocked him was that one of them spoke impeccable English. He says he has since forgive them and let them make a complete U-turn to put to good use the talent they have rather than resorting to robbery.
We pray so, and amen to that prayer too. Yes. And the story Kingsley read on that woman that...
I thought the saying was, to err is human.
Yes. And to forgive,
is divine.
Yes.
So why did they route the prayers through the priest to the Almighty, or they just wanted the priest on his own to just forgive them?
Well, why they were picking the
They were saying, "Forgive us, Father." So forgive us, Father. I think it's a higher...
Who is the priest? Is it the priest?
They are already expressing penitence as they were committing the offense.
No, that is to the priest.
Yes.
The prayer should go upstairs.
It will go through the priest.
So if the prayer hasn't gone upstairs, nemesis or retribution will catch up with them.
Our God is a compassionate and merciful God.
They were making a confession to the priest.
Yes.
It's not a confession. You are directly taking it. It's not a confession. It's not a confession. So maybe they didn't practice very well.
Well, it goes to show that even they, the thieves,
have a
conscience, and they know what they were doing is wrong.
It's unfortunate, yes.
And
prayers now from all Nigerians to our sister, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala. The General Council of the World Trade Organization is to meet today, and they are to shortlist the 5 candidates to 2. The 5 candidates are Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, Nigeria; Leme Fox, United Kingdom; Mohammed Tujari of Saudi Arabia; Yo Myung-yi of South Korea; and Amina Mohammed of Kenya. 27 nations of the European Union yesterday endorsed Dr. Okonjo-Iweala and Yo Myung-hee of South Korea. The council is supposed to reduce the 5 contestants to 2. All things being equal, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala is a renowned finance expert and has experiences in the World Bank up to 25 years, and he stands very good stead. And our prayers will go a long way in supporting his chances.
About the woman that killed her children in Kano. Well, when I was listening to the audio, she said she saw people instead of children, coming with machete to sort of attack her. So she wasn't even aware that it was her children she was killing.
Well, people that suffer from hallucination
comes with depression.
As a result of depression or whatever the factors are, certainly can manifest conduct that they later will regret. But most often than not, when we see these symptoms of depression, hallucination, we tend to cover them up rather than making bold effort to seek help.
Because
these are the extremes. Yes,
she kept telling the
these are the extremes. Because it probably would have been going on for a long time, and they didn't manage it well, and unfortunately it got to that extent. Certainly she will be regretting her action, because when she regains her consciousness, she will now realize what he has done.
Remember. According to the interview, she cannot even remember what happened.
It's unfortunate because there are instances of such mental health challenge that people face, and as Baye just pointed out, it's when the telltale signs begin to manifest, you seek urgent medical attention. Unfortunately, we have also seen in different parts of the country where persons who manifest some of the telltale signs of mental health challenges are chained. Are chained in dungeons and are virtually left to rot because they don't have access to professional mental health practitioners, who would help take care of their condition. It's pretty sad because it seemed on the face of it foolish for you to say, look, you are taking the lives of your children because your husband married another wife. Yes. I mean, you have your offspring, you have your life, and if you didn't want the competition, you could have moved out of the home. But now to take the children, and of course you are still alive, so that raises that very pertinent question as to the state of her health, mental condition at the time she was taking that out. It's a pretty sad development, but it's not just sufficient now to regret what has happened, but to get her in for medical attention.
Yes, and also to put the enlightenment out there. When people manifest such tendencies, we should not put them undercover. We should provide help for them. It is even in some instances, they are accused of witchcraft and ostracized.
That's true.
Let's go to the editorial now.
Just before we go to the editorial, I'm a bit puzzled by the lead story in the Nation newspaper. Army to governors, create access to forests for troops, and that opening up difficult terrains will enhance efficiency in combating bandits. It's a curious story.
Yes, I was wondering too.
I think what probably is implied here is that the governor should grant them access to those forests, because with force of arms, they should be able to penetrate any forest, provided they are given access. And it has happened. There's this forest that borders between Kaduna, Zamfara, and Niger State. The Nigerian army now has a camp there. You recall they were tormenting road users around Birnin-Gwari area. It was until they took over that forest before those things went on there. And what the Kaduna State government, in fact, it was a committee by the governors of the Northwest State when they met at Kaduna, and then they put up measures together with the armed forces to check the excesses along that route. So apparently what is implied there is that they should be given permission to access those.
No, it's not permission. The military doesn't require permission. What they are saying here, the story is quoting the statement by the acting director of Army Public Relations, that they want the northern states to emulate Kogi and Nasarawa state governments by opening up roads in rural locations or in difficult terrain, so as to minimize or eradicate incessant banditry, kidnapping, and robbery. Okay. So open up access roads. Okay. So if you open up one access road and then the bandits relocate to another portion, you go and open up the other access road again. You keep opening and opening, denuding the vegetation, and before you know it, everywhere turns into a desert. Yes. So it's curious. And I said maybe there are further details that will be provided. And in any case, the purpose of having superior area power over the bandits is for you to be able to survey and see precisely what's going on around there. If you recall, at the height of Boko Haram, and Boko Haram is still around in some instances, by the way, around the Lake Chad locations, people were saying, look, Sambisa, what is Sambisa? Why don't you deforest Sambisa? And of course, that would be an extreme measure because Sambisa forest is huge. It would be an extreme measure. And you see the defoliation that took place during the Vietnam crisis is still one that continues to haunt the U.S. till today. But to say that they should create access roads for you, that's why you have those rugged military vehicles. That's for all weather, all seasons. So if it is, for instance, to chase sea robbers, I don't know what was going to happen. Then you have the amphibious. As I said, it's a curious story. Perhaps we'll get some clarification later.
Let's go to the editorial. And it's coming from the Punch newspaper. Talking about resolving high-profile corruption cases. I'm just going to read a little out of it. The chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, Itse Sagi, has lent his weighty voice to long-muted allegations that some senior members of the federal government are subverting the anti-graft war. And it went further to say, fighting a war demands resolute will, doggedness, and an effective strategy. The United Nations Convention Against Corruption, to which Nigeria is a signatory, mandates member states to employ effective, coordinated anti-corruption policies as a requirement for developing potent anti-graft strategies.
Well, the editorial is happening on the obstacles that is being put in the war against corruption. And specifically, it says, it points to two of them. Rivalry among agencies that are supposed to carry out the anti-corruption war, and secondly, lack of enthusiasm sometimes by the officers. And Professor Isizaki has even emphasized the fact that the bill to amend the Economic and Financial Commission is likely to also contribute to the demolition of the war against corruption. Specifically, the side instance that it is now appearing as if the anti-corruption justice is only for the poor, but the rich always escape. And he cites an example that a citizen was jailed 3 years for stealing a goat worth 10,000 naira, while on the other hand, there are about 100 high-profile corruption cases that are pending at the office of the Attorney General of the Federation, according to a civil society organization that has raising alarm. And therefore, the editorial is happening on the fact that government should begin to open its doors to the initiatives to anti-corruption war by first of all putting anti-corrupt and graft agencies into serious confidence, so that there are no hindrances to their initiatives, and secondly, so that the new Economic and Financial Crime Commission that will evolve from the bill at the National Assembly will not undermine the war against corruption. It points out that sadly, Nigeria had dropped from the position it had before, about 146 under anti-corruption ladder, to 180, and that shows that in spite of our initiative on the world scale, we are declining rather than advancing.
All right, Bayo, it speaks for itself, and your comments are also valued. Thank you very much for being around today. See you again tomorrow. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria, and we are live on NTA's network service. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with the state of teaching in Nigeria against the background of the goodies announced yesterday by President Buhari.
Special salary scale for teachers in basic and secondary schools, including provisions for rural posting allowance, science teacher allowances, and peculiar allowances, is hereby given. Free tuition and automatic admission for biological children of teachers in their respective schools.
I am confident that many teachers will rise up to the challenge to work harder and emerge as stars of our future.
In order to safeguard the health and safety of the learners, teachers, and the school community as a whole.
Training and retraining of teachers. As I speak with you, I've attended so many trainings abroad, courtesy of Lagos State, and this has brought about all these laurels.
Without teachers, we all can't be where we are today. So I'm glad that this event is taking place. But beyond the ceremony, we need to, number one, good training of teachers. Secondly, a good pay for teachers.
So impact more knowledge to them, because during the holidays, some of them were actually engaged in the online teaching. So we'll continue from there. And the one we have not finished, we have to come back to teach the students in order for them to become important in future.
All right, joining us in the studios now to discuss these latest developments, let's welcome Professor Josiah Ajiboye. He's the Registrar and Chief Executive Officer of the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria. Professor Ajiboye, a pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Nigerians.
Also here with us in the studios, the regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria, a passionate individual about teachers and teaching, Chief Sylvester Onoja, former Commissioner for Education and former Chairman, Teaching Service Commission, Kogi State. He was also principal at some point, King's College in Lagos. Chief Onoja, delighted to have you with us this morning.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
All right.
And also joining us is Dr. Mike Ike-Ene, Secretary General, Nigerian Union of Teachers, NUT. Thanks for joining us.
Beautiful morning, our viewers.
It's been a pleasure. Ekesli.
All right, so gentlemen, let's begin the conversation. Against the background of the bouquet of goodies that President Muhammadu Buhari announced yesterday for teachers and the teaching profession in the country, is this a new dawn for the profession and the professionals? Let's begin with Chief Sylvester Onoja.
Thank you very much. We are all very happy. But we are happy in the sense that what Nigeria is today is courtesy of what teachers made it to be. And I always like to go back in history. On the 6th of June, 1859, a gentleman called Thomas Babington Macaulay became the principal of the first secondary school in Nigeria. He was married to the daughter of Ajayi Crowther, called Abigail. The marriage between Abigail and Babington Macaulay gave birth to a son called Hubert Macaulay. he started that revolution that brought independence to Nigeria. So we want to make sure, a teacher's son was the one that liberated us. He started the liberation struggle. So whoever you are, the teachers have always been there. But I want to specifically thank President Buhari for what he has done. We started this journey 30 years ago when teachers started to agitate for better services, for better conditions of service. It has not always been so. Prior to 1948, when we had the first university, and the subsequent years before the war, a university lecturer earned higher than the permanent secretary. A university lecturer was on salary grade A, and permanent secretaries on salary grade B. It has always been so before the war. Then things fell apart. Then the teachers who were respected in society lost that respect because their economic power had been taken away from them. It was made worse in 1968 when the Civil War started. The first set of people who were owed salaries, who were not paid, were teachers. In 1968-69, teachers were not paid salaries. A lot of them left. Some joined the Army Education Corps and all that. And teachers lost their respect in the communities where they worked. So what happened yesterday and what the president has done, all the teachers, I think we must thank him for being able to harness the courage to do what he has done. The teachers need much more. And like I have always said, he's preparing us. The traveling allowances to heaven has been increased.
All right, thank you very much, Chief Onoja, for your opening salvo. Let's also bring in Professor Josiah Ajiboye. That's the CEO of Teachers Registration Council. A new dawn for teachers and teaching?
Thank you very much. I think Chief actually brokered this, and yes, if our reward is, they said our reward is generally in heaven, but let us begin to enjoy part of it here. And actually, let me just, on behalf of the Nigerian teachers, actually appreciate Mr. President and the Honorable Minister of Education, Malam Adamu, for believing in us as teachers. Because look, the two major focus that actually guided Mr. President's approval. One, how do we attract the best brains to teaching? That's number one. We're looking at that because we felt over the years, look, like what Chief Onoja said, but more importantly, even after the Civil War, things were restored for the teachers, but immediately the structural adjustment program was introduced. The first set of people that were crippled in terms of remuneration were the teachers. So from early 90s, you begin to see a dwindling in the fortunes of the teachers where teacher salaries were not paid in some states for more than a year. It was so pathetic. And because of that, so many good teachers actually left the profession. And those who did not leave, those who did not get anywhere to live, they have to combine with some other things to eke out some living, and that's where you see teachers bringing some things, stuff to schools to sell and things like that. So it became a major problem. But thanks to Mr. President, with the pronouncement and the announcements made yesterday by the Honorable Minister of Education, now we are on our way to recovery. I believe very strongly that if these goodies are implemented, we will be able to, one, attract best brains to teaching, two, retain, because we are looking at both attracting the best brains and then retention of the good teachers. Look, good teachers are living. And they are living in experienced ones. They are living in droves. Yes, we said we want to employ younger people and things like that. But believe you me, look, you need these experienced teachers. And that's why we were looking at those two focal things. How to bring young ones who are brilliant. So if you introduce a bursary, like I know we are going to look at the details. The bursary award, introduction of bursary award to those who want to read education. I believe very strong that will bring competition. So the idea of people scoring 200 or 180 and then going to education will no longer arise. You will now begin to have young and vibrant people who are interested in the profession, who will be passionate about the profession now going into it. So, I think what the president has done is a landmark thing, and we actually appreciate him. And I know the Nigerian Union of Teachers is well represented here with the Secretary General. As teachers, we are proud of what he has done. And we believe very strongly that with this, it's going to be a new dawn for the Nigerian teachers.
Okay, Professor, thank you so much for your opening salvo there. Let's join Dr. Mike Ike, Secretary General, Nigerian Union of Journalists. Teachers were revered before, they were demigods.
Nigerian Union of Journalists.
Nigerian Union of Teachers, sorry. Can you imagine? I'm in my realm. There. You know, teachers were revered before. You know, I remember teachers, you know, our headmasters and all growing up, you know, they were like demigods. Decisions were not taken without teachers. What comes to my mind is, how did we allow it to go so bad for teachers in Nigeria? How?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
How excited are you with the new, you know, initiative by President Muhammadu Buhari for teachers?
Yes. I think let me take the last one before I go to the first.
Okay.
Yeah, so that we key in with what my colleagues, Onoja and Prof, what they have said. Of course, currently being the Secretary General of NUT, we say that our happiness know no bounds. Yes. We are quite happy. We are very happy. The entire teachers of this country are very, very happy. Truly, like my colleague did say, it's been a long travel, a long demand. Very many years, these things had kept coming. But I want to thank Mr. President for blazing the trail. Because before now, I recall that very many a time, the current Minister of Education had always said that they were going to declare a state of emergency in the education industry. Meaning that education itself and the industry is at the brink of collapsing. However, in some decades past, I've not seen a president that has blazed the trail by way of doling out all the things we had yesterday. It's unprecedented. So we are quite happy. And of course, when you give a child something that is so big, you are empowering that child to produce more. So I want to say that, like Prof said, the teachers of Nigeria are so happy and we're ever prepared to give more, to do our best. And coming to the question you asked, yes, in 1948, there was the University of Ibadan. And about our independence, during the time of Zikizim, the Awoizim, the Abubakar, and the rest of them, things were very good. The teacher was the catechist, was the priest, was the writer, the secretary, the teacher, in fact, the community rallies around the teacher. The teacher's house was where any letter, if there is a telegram, they go to the teacher's house to read. Because there was nobody who was as educated as the teacher. So the teacher became everything and had the best respect. Everything was fine, and the war came. Now, during the war, we had 3 years. Look at this coronavirus. Just 6 months, you can see what is happening. Everybody's crying. So you can now imagine teachers who couldn't, like my colleague did say, teachers joined the war. For 3 years, about 3 years, they never touched any book. You know what it means. The other people who were now students, who were in final classes, never touched any book. They were conscripted into the army, boys' company, and the rest of it. Soon after the war, things began to fall apart. Remember, Expo 1970. So these teachers who have lost the grip of teaching came back, had little to give to these students. The students were asked to go and do class 5 and take work. So, what did they do? With beers, they came into the class carrying textbooks. And these teachers, they were looking so huge, and the teachers were small people. And of course, that brought Expo 1970. And that was the beginning, the turn of the disrespect. We began to lose our value system. The teacher was no longer seen as anybody in the society. Because these other people who had done Expo had learned how to make money. Then, the incursion of the military again did a very big blow to our educational system. But like what he said, again in about the 90s, you now discover that the bourgeois and government also did blow to education. thereby disrupting teachers. About 90s, teachers were owed 13 months, 15 months, 24 months, and nothing happened. In fact, a state governor allowed where education should be the prime of that state. A state governor in this country allowed teachers to be on strike for 1 year. And I tell you, for every strike that you go for 1 day, you have taken 3 months back of the children. So you can imagine where you're allowed a strike to go for 1 year. So of course, all these added values now became a quantum on the teacher, and teacher began to lose his respect. And adding to it, the society had now, because they have now seen that the teacher, when a teacher is old, teacher was now beggarly. Remember, the teacher goes to market the same people, with the same people. He goes to the same hospital. He has children he's training. Of course, what happened? It now came to a turn when if a teacher punishes a child, the parents will come beating the teacher in the school. That was how the value of the teacher got lost. And then, politicians again added to it when they now brought quack people. Politicians were carrying papers as complimentary. You voted for me, they give you paper, go and teach. And when you bring quack, what do you think you get? You get quackery. And as a result, our education began to debase, and people no longer have respect for the teachers. That is that.
Well, Dr. Mike Ike, thank you very much there for the points that you just raised. When you were talking about the last aspect of compensatory employment, I'm sure you're referring to the Instant Republic. That's the Fourth Republic,
yes,
where politicians gave notes to the teaching service boards to employ XYZ yes, because they were their supporters. Thanks a lot. Chief Onoja, we'll have to return to you. I think we have enough time, just so that we can properly contextualize all of this. It appears, though, that it wasn't all necessarily a bad story, because even during the 70s, that's when we had the Universal Primary Education Scheme. And ahead of that scheme, there was also a number of incentives for student teachers, a number of incentives also for teachers, but somewhere along the line, matters actually collapsed. What happened? Why did we not gel? Why did we not ride on those measures that were proposed in the 1970s? And when we had the Second Republic, if you also remember, there were some states, particularly the so-called Lobo states, that's to say the UPN states, introduced free education. You can quarrel with aspects of the implementation, but the whole idea was to place teaching and education and the pupils at the center of the development of those locations. But overall, it's not been a particularly palatable story for teachers. What went wrong?
Well, thank you very much indeed. My colleagues have gone the memory lane. I will take you further the memory lane. You know how education started in this country. In 1843, a certain Monsieur Magrat established St. Andrew's School in Badagry. The first Christmas was celebrated in this country in 1842. He was later joined by Henry Townsend and all others. And formal education in Nigeria started at that time. 7 years later, what later became CMS Grammar School started as a nursery school in 1850. And then the first girls' school, St. Anne's, it was then in Yaba, but it's now in Imolete in Ibadan in 1869. That same year, another teacher training institution was established in Abeokuta. But those who brought it fell out with the Alake, and they were sent out. They went to Lagos. They didn't quite settle until they went to Oyo in 1875 and established St. Andrew's College, Oyo. That was the first teacher training institution in Nigeria. Then after that, other schools started. The Methodist Boys High School in 1878 in Lagos, Methodist Girls High School in 1879, and the Egba community, they were the first to establish a community secondary school. Abeokuta Grammar School was in 1908. All this while, education was going on. It was only in part of southern Nigeria that there was some education going on. And it was only in 1920 that the first teacher training institution and the first post-primary institution was built in the whole of eastern Nigeria. I am not eastern Nigeria, I'm talking out the other ones that were done in Calabar and all that. But formal, when Bishop Shanahan established the Christ the King College, Onitsha, in 1920. It was supposed to train teachers and catechists. Then there was no secondary school in what was then the Igbo land at that time, until, of course, the Methodist mission went to Uzuakoli and established the Methodist Boys High School, Uzuakoli, in 1923, making it the first secondary school in Igbo land. Later, there was a CMS missionary in Obosi called Canon Dennis. He also moved to Onitsha and established the Dennis Memorial Grammar School in 1925. And the first government school in eastern Nigeria was in 1929, Government College Umuahia. In northern Nigeria, it was only in 1921 that the process to start what was Katsina College was established. And it later metamorphosed into what we know today as Barewa College and all this. At independence, there were 842 secondary schools in the southern part of Nigeria and 41 secondary schools in northern Nigeria. That was because the missionary influence in the southern part of Nigeria was great. That's the history of education. The teachers were revered. I have the privilege of having been principal of King's College. In those days, in 1909, there were 3 buildings on the marina. One was for the Archbishop, the Bishop of the Anglican Communion. The second was the Governor General of the Southern Protectorate. And the third one was the principal of King's College. Another one was later added, the Managing Director of the Nigerian Railways. In the absence of the Governor General of the Southern Protectorate, the Managing Director of the Nigerian Railways, at that time railways were being built, they had gone beyond Ibadan, acted as the acting Governor General of the Southern Protectorate. In the absence of both of them, the principal of King's College was the acting Governor General of the Southern Protectorate. That was how important the teacher was. And I'm going down the way, and then the quality of education and the people that came into all this. You see, we have come a long way. Unfortunately, teaching is the mother of all professions. And what we have had in this country is that have people who refuse to pay back and give respect to teachers. The First Republic was largely made up of teachers. Abubakar Tafawa Balewa went to Barewa College. He was a teacher. Sir Amadu Bello was a teacher. Shehu Shagari, he was both a student at Barewa College and a teacher at Barewa College. So the leaders at that time were teachers. Unfortunately, this is a profession. Alhaji Amadu Bello did a lot for education. And one other leader that did so much for education in northern Nigeria was Audu Bako. Whatever you have in Kano today is largely owed to that man called Audu Bako. And for me, I will refer to him as another Sadauna. Now, what has happened to this education? The teachers were depossessed. The teachers were no longer regarded. Money came after the war. We became materialistic. Everybody wanted money. Because the teacher who wakes up early in the morning at 4 a.m. to read his notes of lesson, by 5 o'clock, he's on his way to school to go and tend other people's children to make them happy. Today, when people send, young men now send their children to school at age 2 or 3, so the teacher also has become a nanny. A teacher has done so much for this country. They need to be respected. And for what President Buhari has done, he has laid the foundation for the development of this country for the first time. No country can develop without quality teachers. Knowledge, education is the only key that opens the door to development. If you neglect education, you have neglected every aspect of your life. So you must pay attention to education. And I want to thank President Buhari for the challenge And it's the beginning of the struggle. The teacher should not be deceived. It's not the beginning. And the states that have always looked down on education, are they going to key into this policy? See, one of the greatest problems we have had over the years is that we have no educational planning. God bless the soul of Professor Dedeji. He was the last one that planned what you refer to as the 1975 UPE. The universal primary education was well planned, well intended. They wanted teachers who wanted to take off. Unfortunately, in the process of trying to implement, we had problems. Who were the ones who went to teacher training institutions? They were not qualified. Anybody who had nothing to do was admitted into the UPE, as they call it. And it was abused. And people who didn't want to be teachers came into it. And they diluted those who actually want to be teachers. The teaching profession are two. Either you become a teacher because you are called to do so. I think that there's a divine calling to be a teacher. Those ones, the fire does not, it doesn't go out. There are those also who have come into teaching because they have nothing else to do. For one, I mean, the people I refer to are cheaters. There are teachers and there are cheaters. And today, there are quite a lot of teachers in the noble profession. My professor is here, and he has been fantastic. He's doing the Teachers Registration Council has, soured under his supervision. We must do something about that one. There are a lot of house cleaning has to be done. And in the area of secondary school that is a beneficiary, the secondary school has still remained an orphan. There are no meaningful regulatory bodies to make sure that things are done properly. The universities have the National Universities Commission to regulate. The polytechnics and monotechnics have the NBT, the National Board for Technical Education. The colleges of education have the NCC to regulate. And the UBEC is a lame duck administrator, at least at the lower level. But nobody regulates the secondary education sector, to the extent that if you sell tomatoes in the market and there's no good market for tomatoes, you go to establish a secondary school of your own. And the secondary school has remained unregulated. And those who are teaching in a lot of the private schools have not gone through any form of teacher training. So I don't know if I have answered your question, but I took you the memory lane so that you know where we are.
You took us down memory lane, and I have goosebumps all over me just listening to you, about the golden age of teachers in Nigeria. Now, Professor Josiah Olusegun Abibu, talking about development of education, regulation of education, now with this new incentive by the president, do we need to take a step back, to look at the teachers' colleges we used to have before? Do we need to go back to, reinvent education in Nigeria and bring it up to par with the rest of the world? What do we do? What are we supposed to do here now?
Thank you very much. There have been that advocacy. So many people are advocating that perhaps we should return back to what you call the old teachers grade 2 system. But I always tell them, education actually evolves. And there's what we call change, and these are the things that we have to cope with. We don't need to go back to the old teachers college. Perhaps what we need to do, and we have been advocating that, is to look at the curricula that we operate in the colleges of education presently. How do we import some of the things that we used to make teachers grade 2 very thick? Okay, when you look at principles and practice of education, and I know, sir, you remember very well, that those are the basic things, principles and practice of education. When you look at their teaching practice and things like that, what they used to do, they go on teaching practice for a whole year. It's not this 6 weeks, 1 week thing, and that the schools are closed, and then the teacher on teaching practice, they will just, no. We used to have a full-time teaching practice experience where teachers will participate in all the activities of the school, including marking register, school register, and things like that. So, let us look at the components that were there in the whole teachers college and then see how we can import that into the new. And I want to say this, that the current headship of the National Commission for Colleges of Education have started this kind of review. I am glad to say that and to tell Nigerians, we have started that kind of review. And what we are doing, in fact, part of what we are doing is to make sure that the principles and the practice that we are talking about that are incorporated in the professional standards for Nigerian teachers developed by the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria have now been imported into the new curricula for colleges of education, because these professional standards for Nigerian teachers actually articulates the minimum knowledge that is required for somebody to be called a teacher. You know, what are the skills, the pedagogical skills that are required for somebody who wants to be a teacher, and the code of conduct and practice of teachers. All these things have now been incorporated in the new curricula for colleges of education. We believe that if they are faithfully implemented, look, there will be a turnaround. Look, we cannot just go back. Let us look forward, you know, and see what we can do better. Okay? And I think this is the direction by which we are moving presently. When the issue of the policies were talked about, yes, from the first national policy on education, which came out as a national policy, was the one that came out in 1977. Okay, since then we have had series of reviews of the national policy on education. Okay, but what the minister upon his assumption of office actually came up with the ministerial agenda on education, and this agenda rests on 10 pillars. Okay, the agenda rests on 10 pillars, and the first pillar is talking about, part of the pillar is talking about quality teaching. That's part of the pillar. I think it's number 3. It's talking about quality teaching. Okay, and in addressing that, we look at what is happening, pre-service teachers, we look at in-service teachers, and then we look at continuing professional development for Nigerian teachers. I think the pillars that the minister came up with, what you call the MSP, Ministerial Strategic Plan, that the minister came up with, actually, if well implemented, I think we don't need any other thing to take us there. Look, if well implemented, but like what the issue that has been raised by Chief Onoja, education being on concurrent list is a little bit of a challenge. When some of these things are done at the national level, you still need a buy-in. You still need a buy-in of the states. And you know what I mean. You know what I mean. That's where we normally have it, the thieves, you know. We normally have the problem, the challenges, because you will need to secure the buy-in of the state governors and the ministries of education and everything like that to make sure that those policies are well implemented. But the rapport that we enjoy with some of the commissioners, especially using the platform of the National Council on Education, has always helped us. Because when we have some of these policies, we take them to the National Council on Education, where the state commissioners are members and the permanent secretaries, they are members of the National Council on Education. And when we lay some of these things bare to them, we make them realize, yes, there have been challenges. When you go to states, I will not deny it. There have been challenges in terms of quality of teachers, in terms of this. We have raised those issues. And when we go to those states, we make them realize. You know, I was discussing before we entered the studio with Chief Onoja, and I said, look, yes, we recognize the challenges that we already have in some states with regards to the quality of teachers. Yes, you know, and if you want, like what he said, you know, no country will ever develop, you know, without education. Recently, you know, just last year, Bill Gates, you know, the richest man in the world, I think, came here and he addressed the presidential council, which I think I was there at that meeting at the State House, and he raised 2 fundamental issues. One is human capital development, and you know, in terms of education or of the teeming population of Nigerians. 2 is about our health issues, and that if these 2 issues have been able to, if they are well addressed, our country will witness a, because look, everything, yes, we agree we have infrastructural deficit in the country. No, there's no doubt about that. We agree there's infrastructural deficit. But apart from that, can we focus on human capital development in terms of the quality of education of Nigerians? Can we focus on the health issues as concerned Nigerians? And so if Mr. President is coming now to now roll out some of these things that he did yesterday, we know that you were beginning, because you know, yes, education is very fundamental, but the teachers hold the key. The teachers hold the key.
Professor Ajiboye, thank you very much. A number of issues you've thrown up, including, for instance, the revision of the curriculum for the NCE program. You say that might introduce principles and practice of education. I heard you mention that. what is going to happen? You just talked about Bill Gates and his accent on health. There used to also be health and physical education at the teacher's level.
Yes, in second.
And then there also used to be teaching methods.
Yes.
I don't know whether that is done at the NCE level. Teaching methods. There's English teaching methods, mathematics teaching methods, so that you don't have children who are running away from maths class. Ways of introducing those subjects to them. It's a very complicated and interesting issue that you have raised there. But in addition to that, Chief Onoja touched on it. I would like the Secretary General of the NUT to also begin to address this point. The praise that you have heaped on the President for the measures that he announced yesterday is deserving. There's been concurrence from the other two guests who are here with us in the studios, plus what we have also accessed from the media reports. But we have a constitutional democracy. And Professor Ajiboye already said, well, you know, education is on the concurrent list. And when the issue of minimum wage comes, you see how a number of states continue to drag their feet. Some of them are still at the stage of minimum wage of about 15 or more years ago. What would you like to see in terms of acceptance of the measures announced by the President countrywide?
Thank you. Well, it looks tall. It looks tall in the whole sense of it. But if the will is there, we can achieve, just like Prof has said. I want to say emphatically that anybody that listens to that pronouncement, it has a caveat at the end of that pronouncement. President did direct through the ministry, Federal Ministry of Education. It was urging all ministries, all agencies that are concerned towards actualizing these pronouncements, that they should make haste. And what are we talking about? Just like what you have said. I guess based on the pronouncements, you can see the Federal Ministry of Finance, Justice, the commission that does has Salaries and Wages Commission, the Federal Ministry of Education will be fully involved, and other agencies. Our prayer is that, just like Prof has mentioned, the biggest problem we have is that education, in quotes, looks like an orphan. Because right now, Federal Government College has only 104 unity schools. The rest are in the states and local governments. And you need to see, I didn't sleep until about 1 yesterday, because people wanted clarification. So right now, we are appealing that those who are going to implement will not begin to bring technicalities.
Such as?
What are the laws backing these things? People will now begin to say...
NUT also said they want a law to back...
Oh, of course, because you cannot get 65 years without backing it with a law.
Yes.
True. You cannot get increase in salary when they say you have a structure. The structure, we get a law. Vis-a-vis every other thing that is there. When you start salaried promotion, you promote 104 unity schools, what happens in the states? Where our teachers are owed, as I talk to you, like he asked, some people are still in the 18,000 naira minimum wage. We are still battling with 30,000 naira. And unfortunately, each time this thing happens, the axe will fall on the teacher. That's our greatest problem. The axe will fall on the teacher. So you find out that during implementation, with all this happiness, when you get to local government, the local government administration will scuttle it, because they are the ones in charge of the primary. You get to secondary schools, you begin to wonder. I got to a state where a governor is a lecturer He told me he just left chemistry class as a lecturer, and today he is owing 11 months to our secondary school teachers. So what do you say about it? So the point is that here and now, I want to say in national television, we want to appeal to all the agencies that are going to implement this, because before you know it, technicalities begin to come.
Won't you be part of the process?
Of course. They'll begin to drag their feet. And you know what happens in the normal bureaucracy of public and civil service? You keep a file, nobody will attend to it, they will be moving from one table to another. Nothing will happen. So, I want to thank the current minister for pushing this, and most importantly, Mr. President. Because if you run away from your farm because you have weeds, of course, nobody is going to pull the weeds for you. So Mr. President has at least taken a bold step. So it remains on the other Nigerians to help Mr. President to actualize these bold steps he has taken.
Well, Dr. Mike, and thanks a lot. Chief Mike Onoja, you were once chairman of the Teaching Service Commission in Kogi State. What do you foresee as the implementation challenges of the welfare packages announced yesterday by Mr. President?
Well, thank you very much. I'm Sylvester Onoja. Now, you see, I don't want to be personal, but I have been in the education industry for the last 52 years. I have spent 27 years as a member of the National Council on Education. And I have been Commissioner of Education in my state for 6 years. And I have been chairman of the Teaching Service Commission in Kogi State for 3 years. I have been a member of the Benue State Teaching Service Commission nearly 40 years ago. So I know how we behave. What the minister has done is the greatest step that has taken in education. But I can assure you that education is on the concurrent list. As Commissioner for Education in my state, it was almost impossible to carry on the local governments. There are some local governments, and I mean Prof is here, who would rather recruit secondary school dropouts as teachers instead of NCA teachers because they have no money to pay. Of course there is money to pay. There's money for education in this country. And the last anybody will say, there's money for education. For God's sake, the money that we use to send people to go on pilgrimage to Mecca and Jerusalem, that is money for education. The money that governors use to build new government houses, that is money for education. The money that governors use to build airports that nobody goes to, that is money for education. All we need is the will to do it. And if we fail to provide education for the people, we are doomed. A lot of us are on the run now. Yeah. The bandits are the people we abandoned. We didn't give them education. And nobody should say, oh, I come from a part of the country where education is available. If any part of this country is deprived of education, all of us are in danger. So the state governors should be prevailed upon to take education as their number one priority, to take education as their number two priority, and to take education as their number three priority. Education is the only thing that will save us from the terrible things ahead. And what President Buhari did yesterday, he fired the first shot at terrorism. Yes. If we can get education right, education is the only weapon that can kill terrorism. Yeah. For now, we are budgeting to kill terrorists. The first shot at terrorism was fired by what the president did yesterday. But we must make sure that the other parts, the other tiers of government, the states and the local governments pay. There are some states that are not paying the real salaries. They only pay percentages. I know of a state where teachers are paid percentages or bending on the whims and caprices of the governor. Some local governments, they are not paying salaries. And then the political courage. There are some schools, and I can tell you from point of view, I've been the chairman of a teaching service commission and having been a commissioner for education in my state, there are schools that are only kept purely for political purposes. There are schools that are established and there are schools that are sited. Most of our schools are sited, they are not established. A politician comes to a community and says, oh, because of your support, I am going to build a secondary school for you.
That is siting.
That is siting.
Not implemented.
Not established. The schools that are established are nourished, they are watered and made to this. They take 1 or 2, 4 classrooms, post 2 or 3 teachers, that's the end. And the states use this because of this federation account thing. The statistics they bring to the states, part of it has to do with enrollment. A lot of them are lies. They are not true. So we have to be honest. There must be the political will. We do not have as many primary schools as we have on our statistics and all that. So the political will must be there. And people should know that the only thing can move forward is education. And we should approach it with honesty.
Sorry to interject, Chief Onoja, Professor Ajiboye. Sometimes when you have a nagging problem, you may just wish for drastic, if not radical solutions. There's no question about it that one of the likely implementation challenges would arise from the provisions of the Constitution in the schedules where you have education on the concurrent list. I do know that and recognize that there is the agitation for true federalism. The federal government has too much powers, X, Y, Z, so devolve powers to the states, and some items you take off. But education is the bedrock of any society, and we have had these challenges with education for several decades running. Might it be too radical to suggest, for instance, assuming it is possible, for the federal government to actually be in charge of education, so that these implementation issues may not arise? Because that will require amendments to the Constitution in certain respects, and of course it may also throw up cultural issues and all that. Because attractive as these incentives are now, we are going to have challenges and problems down the road. And if we are not careful, probably we'll also be faced with industrial action in cases of non-implementation. Professor Ajiboye, what are your thoughts?
Well, thank you very much. You know, number one thing has been done by Mr. President. You know, when people told me yesterday, last night, like you said, you didn't sleep, the same thing happened to me. I left here for a program in the evening, and when I got home, somebody said there's going to be the program will be shown again by 10:30, so I waited, and then I started having calls. Yes, how is it going to affect us? What of the states? What are you going to do? How are you going to make sure this is implemented for the states? You know, I agree but I told them, Mr. President has done the first thing. The first plank has actually been shown to Nigerians yesterday, and I think this is the way to go. Look, with this, we can confront anybody. There's going to be, it's going to be a 2-stage thing. I told some people, or a multiple stage, a 3-stage thing. Yes, we are going to confront the states, but you need something to confront them with. There must be a standard. And what Mr. President did yesterday was to set that basic standard that you can now use to engage any state government. You can now use to engage any local government chairman. I think with that on our side, yes, we agree. There are certain things. No, you are not the first person thinking that way, that perhaps education should be moved to exclusive list. You are not. Given the importance of education and given the crisis situation education is in the country. No, you are not going to be the first person. I want to, even one immediate past Minister of State for Education, the immediate past Minister of State for Education, actually, Professor Anwuka, has even canvassed openly in a stakeholders meeting that, look, can't we, for some time, move education to exclusive list so that we'll be able to address this rot in the system? Because, look, the rot is enormous. It's enormous. Going even from basic to, yes, he mentioned even secondary being an orphan. You know, and I want to assure you, Chief Onoja, that the current president, Mr. President, has also approved that there should be a national commission for secondary schools. NUT, I think you can, yes, you are aware of that. Yes, the president has approved that there should be, because they have been prevaricating over the years about having a commission that will address secondary education in Nigeria. But the Mr. President has approved that as well. And we are even...
Well, if it's approved, it has to go to the Federal Executive Council and then to the National Assembly, so that it's backed by law, I believe.
Do you know, before then, let me say this, that they have actually gone through all those before.
Right.
It was just about the level of implementation where it was stopped.
Okay.
And what Mr. President did was that, look, can we take it up further from here? If it is just implementation, and implementation steering committee were set up. I am part of that committee, and we started working on how are we going to make sure that we implement this, to have a commission that will actually address the issue of secondary. So what Mr. President did yesterday was to actually set the standard. Now we are going to confront the states with this standard, and we are going to confront the local governments. But if we all agree to be on the same page, that we are not going to look. Chief Onoja painted a very serious picture, and I was shaking my head when he was speaking, because look, yes, because we have insurgency on our hands, we have all this banditry and all this kind of thing, because we neglected one critical area, and that is education. Okay, education is the way of development for any country. Believe you me, So Chief Onoja, when he was saying it, I was just shaking my head, because it's very, very crucial. State governments will have to recognize that. Look, if you don't build, if you don't build your people, the human capital development is a big resource. Some countries of the world do not have these natural resources that we have. That is the reality. Countries like Japan, Singapore, and all this kind of, they cannot boast of these natural resources that we think we have in Nigeria. And the natural resources, believe you me, they are finite. They are going to end one day. Okay? So the real way to go is the way of education, empowering your people, so that you make your people to be competitive globally. If Nigerians are given the best of education, we know that this country, this insurgency that we are fighting, a lot of, is now taking a lot of our resources. This banditry taking a lot of insecurity. If you know the amounts of security fault that governors enjoy and things like that because of this banditry, insecurity and things like that, we will be able to reduce that if we focus on education. And I believe very strongly, governors should begin to, and I think our people have to impress it on their governors. It depends on what we want as a people. Let us, as a people, together work with this administration, because if the president is leading us in this direction and Nigerians themselves are not applying themselves, we have to use this to challenge our governors. He has provided a platform for us yesterday to use it to challenge our governors, to be able to know where the direction that they should go. And I think this is a responsibility that it's not going to be left to Nigerian Union of Teachers alone. It's not going to be left to teachers. Yes, even as TRCN, I was telling some people that I think, in developing the policy, in coming out with the policy, maybe we have tried our own, and we got the Honorable Minister, and then the Honorable Minister went into Mr. President, and he was able to secure the approval. I said, maybe TRCN has even done his own. Now, the implementation struggles, we have to be as some other. It's now for Nigerians to be able to come out and say, yes, with what Mr. President has announced, there is no state that should go back on this. Every state must try as much as possible to implement what Mr. President, the pronouncements that were made by Mr. President. But there are some that are even conveniently, for example, those ones like teaching practice now, because we look at that component, we said it's a very critical component. When students go on teaching practice, they are not treated like engineering students who go on CWES. Now they are now going to be treated like engineering students, and those other students in technical area that goes on CWES, they will be placed on certain stipends, yes, which will come from TED fund. It does not need any law. There are certain aspects, there are some aspects of it that do not require any law to be able to implement. Both the teachers, the lecturers who are going to supervise the teaching practice, and the students who will go to, they will now be paid directly from TED fund. We do not need any law to do that. They fall under tertiary education. So, and the state fund that is going to fund. So there are certain things that we do not now, also to engage the head of service and make sure that anybody who graduated in education starts on level 9 instead of 8 does not require any law. Okay, what we need to do is to present the presidential approval, have a discussion with the head of service, and then the Ministry of Establishments and things like that, so that, and Civil Service Commission, so that they will be able to harmonize the position. And yeah, it's not the first time Other professionals are being started on, even medical doctors are being started on, is it 10 or something? So, it's not strange, okay, to our system. Some of these things do not require law to implement. Those quick wins, we will be able to quickly pursue them and make sure that they are quickly implemented.
As you were speaking, Jumai, we're going to have to take a short break. As you were speaking, I was also wondering whether UBEC cannot tweak its own approach to funding basic education rather than dealing with infrastructure. If TED Fund is already taking over aspects, according to the President's directive, of funding of financing teaching practice, are there things that UBEC itself can also do? Because for many years we had a situation where UBEC funds were available, states were not accessing those funds, but that has changed. So instead of just chasing infrastructure, are there other aspects under this incentive scheme to say, because a constitutional amendment might take a much longer process, to say pull everything under the exclusive list, and then you create all kinds of agitation as to, no, we want true federalism, don't interfere with our cultural system. Could it then be that, maybe for the construction of accommodation for teachers in the rural areas, UBEC can take over that? Maybe for the payment of teachers who are now above 60 years before they retire at 65, UBEC can take over that. A number of ideas that I'm sure stakeholders will have to chew on. It's Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. We're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll take your tweets and then return to our guests.
A new edition of TV Guide is out, featuring great personalities from all walks of life. Expository interview with a young TV presenter who shows passion on what she does, Morayo Afolabi Brown of TVC. Pick a copy of this compendium of mind-blowing stories and get abreast with issues as regards media convergence, leadership, health, star profiles, star programs, fashion, sports, human angle stories, and lots more. Meet some media professionals within our space who have paid their dues in no small ways. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
All right, you're welcome back, and I still Good Morning Nigeria on NTA's network service. Jumai, we'll take the tweets now.
Yes, you
all right. Festus Akimboyewa has the first tweet here. It says, President Buhari's policy on Nigerian teachers should be applauded. But if the federal government is serious about taking the teaching profession to the next level, that's the next level it deserves, and making teaching great again, teachers must have access to high quality, well-funded, and evidence-based professional development programs. And state governors must also be ready to pay their teachers very well, because placing quality teachers in classrooms costs a lot of money, and teacher training institutions in Nigeria must be well-funded.
And Chris Simon tweets, Mr. President has done well in socializing a child. A teacher is the second agent of socialization after parents, so governments have to care for this group of persons in the society.
Adamu Kacha, Mr. President has done well. What about the state teachers? Are the governors ready to implement the policy in their states, or are we going to see what happens during the minimum wage?
And Titus Monday Knock tweets, teachers have three loves: love of learning, love of learners, and the love of bringing the first two loves together. Education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today. I am not a teacher, but an awakener. The teacher is Alpha and Omega.
Lele Jack Solomon, no politics and no political prejudice on this matter. President Buhari must be commended for approving a special salary scale and new retirement age for teachers. This is laudable. Now, what is desirous to actualize this is by commencing full implementation.
And Comrade Alhaji Ngala tweets, 3 bossas to our dear President. This is a great and excellent development to the entire teachers. We urge the state government to implement and follow the directive. Stakeholders and donors should consider increasing allocations through the education sector and teacher scholarship and development with appropriate safeguards to promote the realization of inclusive and quality education for all.
Usman Banu Kantu, while we commend the bold decision by the federal government, the bulk of the teachers are in the primary schools, and it would appear to them like a mirage because of the absence of viable funding. Anyway, I'm hoping that gradually it will come down to the primary school teachers.
Mike Anyako tweets, many of us are what we are in the society today because of great efforts of our teachers. Days are gone when the rewards of teachers were said to be in heaven. We want their rewards to be here on earth. That is why President Buhari's laudable policy on teachers is highly commendable. In other climes, teachers are highly respected and remunerated too. That Nigerian students and academia are doing excellently well abroad was a result of basic education they got from our teachers. We must recognize these efforts and disciplines by putting teachers on the right pedestal.
Ibrahim Modu Aje, too many unprofessional teachers in our schools. Governments at all levels, with the help of the teachers' professional bodies, should get rid of those teachers who are unqualified. Teaching job shouldn't be a job of last resort, but rather a professional job for those with a passion for it.
And coming from Mutana Farouk, I sincerely commend President Muhammadu Buhari for his largesse towards the teachers. I urge the state governors and the local government chairmen to follow suit. However, the educational sector needs to be overhauled. Nigerian teachers are enthusiastic even when the motivation is pathetic.
John Enaruman says the economy is to serve the people and not the other way round. So it's always good to improve conditions of service of workers. However, I would rather prefer a situation where we return to the salary structure across the board, which we had in the 1970s that included the oil sector, than sector-by-sector intervention.
And Badamasi Haruna Adamu tweets, teaching profession is a mother and a compass to all professions. Therefore, the teacher's basic needs, ranging from psychological, safety, social esteem to self-actualization, be provided to serve as motivation to them. May Allah bless all teachers I pass through.
Jibrin Mohammed Saleh, teachers may very well be the first beneficiary of subsidy removal. Very nice, and motivation there by Mr. President. I just hope that the government will fulfill its promise.
Just Chukwere, PhD, tweets, teachers are the bedrock of any society. Teachers' welfare should be #1 priority for massive social transformation.
Jones Ferrari, this is a commendable policy. I look forward to more from the President. I've always been patiently waiting for this kind of day. God bless Nigeria.
And the day has arrived. Leo Fadaka tweets, kudos to PMB. Teachers are the key to development of any nation. Special incentive is a welcome idea in the right direction. Now Nigeria is truly ready to move to the next level if the policy would not be a political statement without implementation.
Adamu Estefanos, it's indeed applaudable. Teachers deserve to be given more priority. We are all where we are academically, socially, and psychologically, based on the solid foundation that teachers give us.
Ahmed Mohammed tweets, while I commend President Muhammadu Buhari for this great gesture, I pray that this move can affect teachers on state government's payroll too.
Mohammed Garba, from Meduguri, I congratulate teachers on this new salary structure, but let the initiative not stop at the federal level. States and local government teachers are more vulnerable. I urge the executive and legislatures to speed up the passage of relevant laws in this respect.
Yusuf Idris tweets, kudos to PMB for this laudable achievement. This initiative will boost teachers' morale and dedicated to service. And again, housing scheme, they should also provide it to the teachers with single-digit interest.
Professor Khalifa Dikwa, I think that's from Madubele University, so always one of our guests on Good Morning Nigeria. He tweets, the teacher is the tree, while other professions are the branches that bear the fruits, whose sweetness depends on the appropriate manure. All right, so those are the
tweets that came in. Nigerians
we'll
are contributing.
In the meantime, we'll return to Dr. Mike Ike, Secretary General of the NUT. We are talking about still on implementation and what needs to be done. Professor Ajiboye has already referred to some quick wins that may not require the lengthy process of legislation or even constitutional amendment. But I'm sure you have some other concerns or you have some other propositions by the time you interact with your colleagues. I was just wondering, I just hope that this doesn't then lead to a rat race hey, teachers have got this, so another set of professionals must also get this. Oh, another set of professionals must also get this. Already, and guests on Good Morning Nigeria have raised that from time to time. We have an unconscionable, virtually unconscionable situation, as they say, where in the same government structure, some establishments, their pay structure is way out, and they don't work 24/7. So is this likely to lead to a rat race, or how can we ensure that that doesn't manifest, but that what the teachers have been given does materialize?
Thank you. Well, looking at what we even got from Nigerians, you can see that they were speaking from the depths of their minds, showing really that what the PMB has done is a very good one. And if we take that one as a cue, yes, there was a debate. Somebody called me from Akwa Ibom. I was asking, did Mr. President make a mistake that this thing should be universal? And I laughed. I said, did you listen to the announcement properly? President knows the meaning of universal and teachers. So you are not far from what might be the truth. The overzealous ones can begin to make insinuations. But like the Honorable had said, Onoja, this demand, governments, so to say, is not a Father Christmas, just like anybody going to court. This demand had been a long race. It didn't just start today. And of course, government didn't just wake up overnight and say, give these people this thing. It's been a long argument and a long submission, a long discussion, and they saw the need. So I think that the president has done well, and Nigerians should see it like that. Now I'm talking about implementation. I hope you are aware that the last 8th assembly we had gone through public hearing about the 65 years. We've gone through the public hearing. The 2 houses got it concurrent and then passed it. It went to president for his assent. We missed it by an inch. And that's exactly the history of these 65 years. So it's not like 65 years came like a blues. We went through the hog. We went through the process. So right now, the question will be, all we need to do now is just to get back to the 9th assembly. And the 2 houses present it, they will concur it, and then if they now need any law to back it, so that it can now, because my fear is, while I keep saying that education is an orphan, is that when the federal government, this thing comes down, you'll find state governments who will begin to argue, we are not interested. But the moment we get this law, it trickles down. It trickles down. Every teacher in the primary and secondary is covered. And by the way, recall that our colleagues in the university, professors retire at 70. Other lecturers, colleges of education, technology, retire at 65. So what is good for the geese is good for the gander. And remember, the primary is the bedrock. If you get it right, you'll find out that the others will follow.
Well, the argument, let's clarify that so that it doesn't become a contentious point. The argument is not necessarily for longevity in service so that they keep paying you salaries after age 60 to up to age 65. It's just that old wine tastes better with time. So why then would you retire somebody at 60 when the person still has a lot to offer? Yeah, provided also there are no cases. Well, this is just a joke. There are no cases of, altered ages, so that by the time a man is already 80 or 90, that's when he's coming to say, but all his teeth would have gone. So,
Yes.
so
I tell you one big other problem why we pursue this is 5. Prof, when he was talked about retention. It might interest you to know that in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, some governments have not employed one teacher. And our teachers have retired in their drones. There's dearth of teachers everywhere. So the old ones who are now going to mentor the new ones are no longer there. That's a part of the problem. So it's not like we're asking you to become a legis. No, it's not. It's not.
It's all about strong will, you said. Chief Sylvester Onoja said political will to implement this thing. We are looking at an overwhelming situation around the world, you know, and mostly teachers have been affected by COVID-19. So let's look at the critical contribution of teachers to, you know, the nation building, you know, self-development of teachers. They're not just asking for incentive. What are they ready to give back in place of the incentive? Because we are looking at a new world order, technologically driven, and it all boils down to, you know, self-development of teachers. So it's a give and take situation, I think.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. Give back. Nobody gives what you don't have. Now, that is where we need to go to basics.
Yes.
What is the quality of our primary education, and what is the quality of our secondary education? What type of people go for teacher training? If you look at this year, JAMB is out with the minimum entry point to universities. If you are going to read regular courses in the university, you require 160. There are 4 subjects taken at JAMB. 160 averages 40%. And you require 5 credits to go to Nigerian universities. Thus, 40% in WAEC and NECO is P8. It's not. It doesn't amount to credit. Now, you go to private universities, 140. That is on the average of 35%. 35% is not a pass mark anywhere. And then you go to colleges of education and polytechnics. I think that's 120. That averages 25%. It's 25% pass mark. So the people we admit into colleges of education are people who scored 25%. The people who do not know, we are recruiting them to go and teach those who ought to know. We have colleges of education that are not properly funded, and the quality of teachers there are questionable because they are not trained and they are not retrained. So we must go back to the basics to make sure that we restore legitimacy to Nigerian education. What do I mean by legitimacy? That the right people are teaching and the right people are being taught. We now have people with PhD holders who are now being recruited to go to teacher training institutions. Not your type of PhD, those who passed high school with difficulty, PhD. 1 credit in NECO, another credit in WAEC, and they ask you to go and do remedial. There are people like that in the teacher training institutions that we have. We have to clean up to make sure that our quality people go so that they can contribute to society. What the president did is commendable. But there are so many other countries in the world. In Libya, for example, the teacher's retirement age is 70, primary school teacher. You go to Finland and you go to other countries on the average of 65 to 67. In the United States of America, teachers retire at the age of 65 to 67. So it is not new, but the president has the courage to do what he did, and we give him all the support. Others have not been able to do it. Then, the low-hanging fruit, the National Secondary Education Commission is a low-hanging fruit. On the 26th of May 1999, Abdusalami Abubakar, who was the head of state at that time, signed into law.
Yes.
All right? Yes. And so it started for a few years, and then something happened, and it was aborted. And so it's a question of going back to it. And I think that should be done so that secondary education can have a regulatory body. Because that is the basic thing. If we eliminate examination fraud, we will have quality education and quality teachers.
All right. Thank you very much, Chief Onoja. Chief Onoja, one point that you have raised in your last submission has to do with the different scores for admission into universities and colleges of education and polytechnics. The registrar of JAMB, Professor Ishaq Oloyede, had been on Good Morning Nigeria sometime in the past. He was also our guest, by the way, last week when we were discussing educational developments in Nigeria at 60. And he did disagree with the view that you are expressing now, not last week, but on some other occasion, that the dregs were not being sent to colleges of education because the intensity of the programs they are getting into aren't the same. NC is not the same as a degree program. But he did say that he would be very willing to engage you in a conversation on that. It's a good fan of Good Morning Nigeria. And if he's listening, at some point we'll get to a few to trash out that particular aspect, because it's not the first time we are raising it. All right, so let's return to Professor Ajiboye, Registrar of Teachers Registration Council. Let's get your closing thoughts.
Well, thank you very much. Actually, it's been a wonderful time since yesterday. Some of us, the euphoria of the announcement has been there. And yes, we want to really once again appreciate Mr. President, but what Nigerians are yearning for is implementation. And I believe that the Honorable Minister of Education, Malam Adamu himself, is not going to sleep because it's implementation now. You know, it's time to put effect to everything that we have secured. You know, if we got all these things from Mr. President and there is no implementation, it will amount to nothing. But I believe very strongly that the Honorable Minister of Education is on his toes and is going to do the needful to make sure that we're able to secure implementation. And I want Nigerians to join in this because it's not just going to be a federal thing. You know, we want Nigerians to use this as a negotiating, you know, as a bargaining tool, yes, with our state governors. Because look, if your state governor is not going to, because the direction that we're supposed to go as a country is what has been, the template has been set yesterday. And the state governors have to actually key in and to follow suit in making sure that all these things are actually implemented in their state. If a state actually is desirable of having quality education, there's nothing stop that governor from even going ahead, going beyond what is there. Because apart from what has been stated, we also included one training program for at least a training program for a teacher in a year. Look, what stops us from giving a teacher at least one training program in 1 year? I had listened to one teacher on your screen who was saying that yes, I've benefited from training program even outside Nigeria, and that is from Lagos State. And I believe other states will want to copy this to make sure that their teachers are giving requisite training. You know, TRCN started what we call digital literacy training program. You know, we didn't know that this pandemic will come like this. When we started in 2018, look at where we are today. Look, so many children cannot be reached at home because of the they cannot be reached because of the digital divide. And so the way to go is the way of blended learning. We now know that our teachers, they cannot function as 21st century teacher if they do not have requisite digital literacy training. And that's the way to go as a country. Thank you very much.
Registrar, Chief Executive Officer, Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria, thank you so much for your contribution to this conversation this morning.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yes, Chief Sylvester Onoja, former Commissioner for Education and former Chairman, Teaching Service Commission, Kogi State. He's also former Principal, King's College, Lagos. Thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
And Dr. Mike Ikene, Secretary General, Nigeria Union of Teachers, NUT. Thank you so much for your input.
Thank you for this honor and privilege.
It's been a pleasure having us.
All right, so best wishes to our teachers and indeed to the teaching profession. That does it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria. We thank you for tuning in. The program returns tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, remember, take personal responsibility. Stay safe and be well. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Juma Yusuf. Enjoy the rest of the day.